At the age of 60, my husband Arthur swallowed sleeping pills without any warning. When I found him, he was wearing the Zhongshan suit that I had ironed with my own hands. He was lying properly on the bed, and there was still a faint smile on his lips. For a moment, I had no idea why he committed suicide. It was not until I found a letter in his arms. My wife Grace. I have fulfilled the promise I made in my whole life, allowing our child to walk in the world openly and aboveboard. Now, our son has a successful career, and our grandson is about to be born. I have no more concerns. Separated by life and death, true love is hard to embrace. I can finally be freed from this unfortunate marriage. This was a letter personally written by Arthur. The strokes of his pen were sharp, and every word cut deep into my heart. My wife in the letter was not me. The true love was not me. But it was me who made his life miserable. I looked at Arthur, who seemed to have died a worthy death on the bed. We had been married for more than 30 years. And it seemed that I had never really known him. Yet I had devoted most of my life to him and raised his son with my own hands. He had achieved everything, had no regrets. And then he died. But he didn't even want to pretend to care about me a little bit. At the age of 60, I realized that I had been deceived for half of my life. I had lived like a joke. Actually, I should have realized it earlier. The details of his lack of love were everywhere in our marriage. Using his claim of having mysophobia as an excuse, Arthur slept in a separate room from me, and we used separate bowls and chopsticks. Except for talking about our son, he never cared about my affairs and never shared his daily life with me. Later, there were even problems in our sexual life, and we never had a marital relationship again. But I didn't dare to complain at all, because I had a deformed uterus and was infertile, which meant Arthur couldn't have his own child. In that era, for a woman like me who couldn't have a child, it was considered perfectly normal to be beaten, scolded, cheated on, or divorced. When I was in my 20s and thought my life was over, it was Arthur who firmly took my hand and told me it didn't matter. At worst, we could adopt a child. I was grateful for his loyalty and did my best to take care of him and our adopted son. He was engaged in chemical research, and his job often required transfers. I gave up my well-paying job at the newspaper office for him and took care of the household chores. When he was down and out, I only ate steamed cornbread, and gave all the vegetables and meat to him and our son. I even didn't buy a new piece of clothing for 3 years. As a result, they still think that I like to eat coarse grains, don't like meat, like to wear soft-toed clothes that have been washed many times, and like to study the patterns of patches. Sometimes I felt wronged, but thinking of my debt to Arthur, I could only sigh silently. I always had expectations in my heart, hoping that when we were old, we could treat each other with respect and have our children and grandchildren around us. But after finally waiting for this day, what I got was Arthur's liberation. I wanted to cry out loud and curse. But half a lifetime of time was too heavy, pressing me so hard that I couldn't breathe. I slumped to the ground, like a fish about to drown, opening my mouth but unable to make a single sound. I don't know how much time had passed. The light and shadow outside the window changed, and a tear fell on the back of my hand. I suddenly came back to my senses. My eyes caught sight of the old wooden box with a lock under Arthur's bed. That was his privacy that he didn't allow me to invade. And now, I found a fire axe and broke into his privacy without hesitation. Inside the box were several fixed tacks of handwritten letters. Some of them were yellowed due to the passage of time, and some had curled edges as if they had been repeatedly stroked. I knew that these letters would turn into sharp blades, stabbing at me one by one. Yet I still trembled and stubbornly opened them one by one. My wife Grace. My wedding will be next month. To ensure that there won't be any other children after marriage, I had a vasectomy today. In my life, I will only have Simon as my child. My wife Grace. Forgive me for having sex with another woman. Actually, hadn't so felt laid sigh. I felt disgusted myself and almost couldn't get an erection. I kept telling myself that it was all for Simon, and I had to endure the humiliation. My wife Grace. I'm really tired of Violet. Fortunately, hadn't so felt way. I came up with a good idea. I told her that I have my sophobia and started to sleep in a separate room from her and use separate bowls and chopsticks. Only in this way can I bear it. My wife Grace. It's been a year since we got married. And Violet still can't get pregnant. I asked someone to forge a certificate of her infertility. She was so ashamed that I think I can mention adopting a child to her in a while. My wife Grace. I have good news for you. Our son has been successfully brought back. My wife Grace. Today I hurt myself. I smashed my genitals to remain faithful to you. My wife Grace. My wife Grace. These 4 words lingered in my mind and ears, and I couldn't get rid of them. I just felt dizzy and had a ringing in my ears. A rush of air was stuck in my chest and then sank into my stomach, causing my stomach and intestines to spasm. Finally, head unfulfilledly, I rushed to the toilet and vomited violently. I vomited until I felt dizzy and disoriented. I tried to get up from the toilet 3 times before I finally managed to stand up. When I came out of the bathroom, I looked at the home where I had lived for more than 30 years. My bedroom and Arthur's were separated by the entire living room, clearly divided. On the dining table that hadn't been tidied up yet, the tableware of our family members was of different styles, as if each had its own territory. Because Arthur said he had my sophobia, our son imitated him after he grew up and understood things. Gradually, everything in our family was allocated separately. Even the sofa. No one would touch what belonged to others. Once, I was so tired that I sat on the sofa that belonged to Arthur. Arthur flew into a rage and was so angry that he didn't even eat. Later, I coaxed him for a long time and took off the sofa cover to wash it before he calmed down. Even today, when I found that Arthur was dead, I stood at the door of the room for 5 minutes, calling him, but he wouldn't wake up, so I had to break in. Unconsciously, I had almost become the nanny with the strongest sense of boundaries in this family. Just then, my phone rang. My daughter-in-law's pained voice came through. "Mom, I asked you to go home and get a milk warmer. Why have you been gone so long? I'm about to give birth. Simon still has to attend a conference call for the company. I need you to take care of me." Hearing her gasp in pain, I felt sorry for her. I opened my mouth several times before I could make a hoarse sound. "Mom will be back soon. Just wait and don't be afraid." After hanging up the phone, my muddled mind became much clearer. I told myself that I was still a mother and a mother-in-law. Today was the day my daughter-in-law was giving birth. And this was the most important thing. How could the grudges of the older generation affect the children? Even though my adopted son was Arthur's illegitimate child, it wasn't his fault. How could he know that his father was such a duplicitous person? He was the son I had raised with all my efforts. He was my son. "Arthur, since you want to die for love, take the secrets between you and that woman to the grave." I dried my tears, went into Arthur's room to collect his letters, suicide note, and sleeping pills, and erased the traces of his suicide. It would be better if our son found him when he came home and thought that he had died suddenly. But when I was tidying up the drawer, I found Arthur's phone. Afraid that he had left some traces, I opened it, and I saw that there was a timed email on it. The recipient was our son. Instantly, an extremely bad premonition enveloped me. Still trembling, I opened this email. "My son Simon, when you receive this email, your father is already dead. Forgive your father's selfishness. Forgive me for not being able to stand your stepmother any longer. Don't be sad for me either. For me, having fulfilled the promise to your mother in this life, I already feel content." I read these lines of cold words in disbelief. The scene in front of me became blurry. My fingers became stiff, and it was even difficult to slide the screen. So, Simon knew everything. He, his father, and his biological mother were the real family. Then what was I? What was the meaning of my half-life of raising and educating him? I slumped to the ground and reluctantly scrolled down. Unexpectedly, the content below really made me feel as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. "Now that you have a son and a successful career, your father has nothing more to help you with. The only thing I can do is to leave everything to you and relieve you of the burden of supporting the elderly. I have also made arrangements for your stepmother whom you dislike." I added a newly developed biological poison to her insulin. The poison is slow acting. When it starts to take effect, your daughter-in-law will just have finished her confinement period. She will make her final contribution before she dies. And then the life insurance policy I bought for her will also come into effect, and the beneficiary is you. Violet has no relatives or friends. And no one will investigate the cause of her death. Even if they do, the only murderer will be me. I will leave with a bad reputation and give you a perfect life. Finally, having fulfilled my obsession, remember to bury the letters in the locked box under my bed, along with me, beside your mother. In the sweltering summer, a chill rose from the soles of my feet, freezing me in place. It was as if there was a vacuum in my ears. And I couldn't hear anything. Suddenly, I remembered that every year on Simon's birthday, the father and son would disappear for the whole morning. I remembered that when Simon was a child and ran away from home after being disciplined by me, crying and shouting that he wanted to find his biological mother. It was me who searched for him all night in the heavy rain before I found him. I remembered that one day my daughter-in-law bought a bunch of white chrysanthemums but was hesitant and couldn't clearly say who they were for. The past flashed through my mind like a movie. My heart was in a mess. But I had never been so clear-headed as at this moment. After a long while, I controlled my cold body. Quietly, I found my medicine box, took away the tampered insulin, and replaced it with another box to deceive others. I took photos of Arthur's suicide note, letters, and text messages, and then put them back in their original places. I took away the property certificate, the bank book, and all the jewelry. Finally, having fulfilled what I'd say, I even saw Arthur's faint breath. He wasn't dead yet. With a sneer on my lips, I gently closed his door and let him die. With the feeling of guilt and carrying wealth, I walked like a zombie to the hospital. I first went to the hematology department. The blood test results came out quickly. I had a slight poisoning, which led to a decrease in the platelet count. But it wasn't life-threatening. Then I went to the gynecology department to have my uterine problem checked. As soon as I came out after the examination, I ran into Simon head-on. He seemed to be on a work call and was walking from the direction of the gynecology department. When he saw me, his irritable expression reached its peak. He pointed at me rudely, then pointed at the delivery room, and kept urging me with his chin. It turned out that when you are sober, you can really see many things clearly. In the past, seeing him dressed in a suit and bustling around, I was proud of him and genuinely felt sorry for and understood him. I was so afraid that I would hold the child back that I willingly made sacrifices for him. But now, seeing his manner of ordering me around like a servant, thinking of the things he had hidden from me, and thinking of how Arthur casually told him that he wanted to poison me, I just felt my heart turn cold. I ignored him and sat on the bench by myself, waiting for my examination report. Simon's expression was as if he had swallowed a fly. He quickly ended the call, walked quickly to my side, and pushed me rudely. "Mom, what's wrong with you? Today your daughter-in-law is giving birth. Why aren't you waiting in the delivery room? What are you doing in the gynecology department?" I patted the place he had touched in disgust. "Of course. I'm having a physical examination." Simon rolled his eyes directly. "Mom, stop messing around. You're almost 60. What are you doing in the gynecology department? Can't I come to the gynecology department just because I'm 60? Am I not a woman anymore? When you heard that I'm here for a checkup, didn't you even ask if I'm not feeling well?" I felt wronged in my heart, and my voice turned into a sob as I spoke later. I remembered the day when Simon was 8 years old and had pneumonia with a persistent high fever. To take care of him, I didn't even undress. And I didn't have a good night's sleep for half a month. I even missed the last meeting with my father before his death. Later, when Simon got better, I wanted to go back and attend my father's funeral. But Arthur left the son to me on his own, citing that he couldn't get away from work. I wanted to take Simon with me to the funeral, but Simon was too delicate and couldn't stand the bumpy train ride. In the end, I didn't leave the province and turned back. My elder brother was so angry that he cut off the relationship with me, calling me an unfilial daughter. He cursed me as an ungrateful person, saying that I ignored my own relatives and raised someone else's son, and that I would surely get my comeuppance sooner or later. My elder brother's words came true. Thinking of the past, I directly snapped at Simon loudly. Was I like this when you were sick as a child? My voice was quite loud. Other people in the hospital cast disdainful glances at us. Simon always cared about his face. He coughed and his tone softened. Mom, you know I didn't mean that. It's just that your daughter-in-law is about to give birth. And I'm in a hurry. How can the family do without you? Can't do without me? Yes. They really can't do without me when they need a housekeeper. After all, Arthur has to do academic research. Simon has to do business. And the in-laws are on a trip to the Maldives. It's always only me who does the job of serving others. But what about later? I don't even have the right to live. I can't drag my son down. And I have to use my own life to exchange for an insurance payout for my son. I felt extremely bitter in my heart. When I lowered my head, a tear dropped onto my knee. My son was taken aback. Just as he was about to ask something, his phone rang again. This time, it was obviously not a work call, because when Simon looked at his phone, he was as dumbfounded as a wooden chicken. Calculating the time, Arthur's timed text message should have arrived. Arthur arranged everything. If it weren't for my daughter-in-law asking me to go home temporarily, I should be the one staying in the hospital at this moment, and my son would go back to deal with his body. I would know nothing about his conspiracy. Unfortunately, having fulfilled me, God has eyes. And I saw it. Simon was rooted to the spot and didn't move for a long time. After a while, it seemed that he had digested his emotions. And he said with a vase of eyes, Mom, I left an important document at home. I have to go back and get it right away. As Simon finished speaking, the last glimmer of hope in my heart was shattered. Just now, for a moment, I really hoped that this child whom I raised with all my maternal love could stand on my side just once. Even if he didn't tell me the truth. Just feeling a little bit of resentment towards his father's actions. But he didn't. He was a complete ungrateful person. Mom, you go to the delivery room quickly. My wife can't do without someone by her side now. Simon had something on his mind. So he urged me and turned around to leave. At this moment, his phone rang again. The voice of my daughter-in-law came from the receiver. Honey, having fulfilled my accession, I asked Mom to go home and get something for me. But she hasn't come back for a long time. I can't get through to her on the phone now. Do you know where she is? My daughter-in-law was in pain and felt traumatized. I'm giving birth to a child for your old Arthur family. But none of you, 1, 2, or 3, are here. I don't want to give birth to this child anymore. In the past, at such times, my son would definitely try to please his wife. But at this moment, he was like a statue, standing there in a daze. He mechanically turned around and stammered. Mom, having fulfilled my accession, did you go home just now? In answer to my son, there were my bloodshot eyes. Simon's face turned pale. He directly hung up the phone and ran away staggeringly. Section and article truck, I sat in the gynecology department in a daze for 2 hours. Finally, having fulfilled I got my medical examination report. Everything in my uterus was normal. I held the report tightly in my hand. And my mind was full of the cold blocks and harsh treatments I received when I was young because I couldn't have children. As well as the happy expressions of my friends when they had babies. I also thought of the little girl next door who always spent a lot of money buying big brand clothes and bags for her mother, while my adopted son gave me his mother-in-law's old clothes. He still thought that I liked wearing old clothes. But he's in his 30s. A sophisticated business elite. Does he really not know that no one likes old clothes? He just doesn't care about me. I was immersed in grief and didn't notice Simon coming over in a state of anxiety. He tentatively asked, Mom, why haven't you been answering your phone? You know that Dad committed suicide, right? Why didn't you save him? These series of questions made me want to sneer. I said coldly, how could I know? He didn't let me into his room. Simon was at a loss for words. But he obviously breathed a sigh of relief. Since I didn't enter the room, I naturally couldn't see Arthur's letter. And I wouldn't know his conspiracy. So, he resumed his usual interrogating tone. Then what's wrong with you today? You don't care about your daughter-in-law giving birth. And you don't care about my dad committing suicide either. You don't care about anything. Are you really my mom? Huh. I'm indeed not his real mom. I asked him in return, are you really my son? You only care about your wife and your dad. Have you ever asked me a single word? Am I your mom or your family's nanny? I stared at Simon intently. I've already gone through menopause, and it's impossible for me to have children. This ungrateful person in front of me is my only son. The only son I've spent half my life raising with all my efforts. Perhaps feeling guilty, Simon was at a loss for words again. But only for a moment. Then he flew into a rage. Mom. Have you had enough of making a scene? When is this? Even if you have some minor illnesses, can't you put it aside for a while? I almost looked at Simon in shock. How could he talk to me so confidently? When on earth did this child I raised from the very beginning become so rotten to the core? Simon was still chattering. Mom, having fulfilled my absai. You should reflect on yourself. Why didn't you know that your husband committed suicide? Have you really cared about your husband properly? Haven't I cared? I have cared. But Arthur drew a line between us. He would get angry if I entered his territory, lose his temper if I used his things, and be impatient if I cared about his matters. Even when he was sick, it was wrong for me to ask a few more words of concern. Later, I was gradually domesticated by him. Learned to shut up, only do things without saying anything, and silently give. Over the past few decades, all of this has become a matter of course. I said infuriately, I don't know why your dad committed suicide. Then do you know? Simon scratched his hair. Mom, this should be the question you care about. Everyone has a profession in this society. And your profession is a housewife. This isn't the time to guess randomly. You know that your dad hates it when you have too many thoughts. You go and take good care of your dad now. When he wakes up, you apologize properly, and he will forgive you. I replied with a cold "oh." I was a bit disappointed inside. Arthur actually didn't die? It seems that Simon unsaved him. Their family really has a deep affection for each other. Some try to commit suicide together, and some save each other's lives. Only I'm an outsider who deserves to be ignored. At this moment, Simon's gaze fell on my examination report. He snatched it away and snorted coldly. I want to see what illness you have. After Simon saw clearly the content on the report, he finally realized what was going on. His face turned green. But he was still trying to control his expression. Mom, having fulfilled my absai. Aren't you infertile? Is this report wrong? He was really nervous. And he revealed his true colors. I've never told him that I'm infertile. I even always told him that he's my biological son. I sized up Simon and asked him, I'm infertile. How did you know that? Maybe my dad told me. Once I asked him why I didn't have any younger brothers or sisters. And he just said it casually because he cared about his face. Later, I realized that it should be his problem. Simon's acting skills were clumsy. And his words were contradictory. In fact, when I think about it, Arthur's acting skills weren't very good either. It's just that I believed him and was blinded by a single leaf, which led to my being misled for a lifetime. When Simon was stuttering, his phone rang again. This call actually saved him. Arthur woke up. Simon was really happy. He grabbed my shoulder with his big hand and urged me to take care of Arthur. It hurt when he grabbed me. And I shook him off with a cold face. Simon's face also darkened, and he patiently persuaded me, Mom, I know you're thinking too much now. But even if your dad has done something wrong to you, it's all in the past. You're both getting old. Don't make trouble anymore. Yes, let out a low sigh. He's right. I'm already old. I won't make a fuss. I'll just cut through the mess quickly. Seeing that I wasn't moved by his soft words, Simon resorted to harsh words. His tone carried a warning, Mom, I advise you to be sentimental only in the right place. You'll still have to rely on your dad to support you in the future. If you don't show up at this time and your dad gets angry and divorces you, I won't have anything to say. After saying these words, Simon left angrily. It's been an afternoon since the incident happened. And I've calmed down. I'm indeed 60 years old. But I'm not left with nothing. Half of the property that Arta wants to leave to his son belongs to me. I took out all the family property and Arthur's personal property. I called my nephew. Arthur didn't know that I've always been in touch with my nephew. Although my elder brother cut off the relationship with me, I still paid attention to the whereabouts of their family. But that year, my elder brother injured his leg and there was no money for him to study. It was me who sold my dowry jewelry to scrape together enough tuition fees for him. And the university my nephew was admitted to was exactly in my city. During those 4 years in university, I secretly went to cook for other families to earn money to support my nephew while hiding it from Arthur. My nephew is a person who knows how to repay kindness. He would send his regards to me during festivals. It's just that Arthur didn't like having people at home, so I only met him a few times outside. Now, my nephew has become a capable lawyer who can handle things independently. I called him and told him everything. My nephew was silent for a long time. He said through gritted teeth, "Aunt, don't worry. I will help you fight for the property and send these villains to prison." Hearing the concern in my nephew's words, I silently shed tears. It was the first time I received such blatant care. Only then did I clearly realize how pitiful it was to have that sporadic care that could only be obtained through my continuous efforts and only existed in words. I had actually distanced myself from my real relatives for that father and son with corrupt hearts. My own flesh and blood relatives. My nephew was a man of action. An hour later, he appeared at the hospital. First, he took me to the Forensic Identification Center and submitted the poison and insulin for identification. Then he took me to the notary office to notarize the marital property. After a whole afternoon of bistisans, my nephew took me to dinner and wanted to take me back to his home. I said I wanted to go home for a while. My nephew tried to persuade me. "Aunt, don't go back. Your home is like a den of dragons and tigers. What if Arthur tries to harm you again?" I shook my head. I still want to confirm one thing for the last time. As a mother, I actually had a glimmer of hope for Simon. If he still had a bit of feeling for me as his mother and secretly replaced the poison insulin, I would show him some leniency. After all, he was the child I raised with my own hands. My nephew had no choice but to accompany me. When we reached the door of the house, there seemed to be voices coming from inside. My nephew quickly stopped me and motioned for me to be quiet. I imitated him and pressed my ear against the door to listen. Arthur was actually back. The father and son were talking. Arthur was very weak, and his voice was faint. "I told you that my suicide note had been tampered with. You didn't believe me. Now look, even the box under the bed has been pried open. Violet must have entered my room. My suicide note is okay, but the letters in the box contain too much information. Violet knows too much." Simon said anxiously. "You are also at fault. Why did you write everything in the suicide note? What era is it now? You still insist on writing handwritten letters every day." Arthur coughed several times in anger. "The love between me and your mother is something you brat, can't understand. If I hadn't loved your mother all my life, would you be where you are today? Besides, your wife is giving birth. Violet should be at the hospital. How could I know that your wife asked her to come back?" Simon's voice weakened. "This was indeed an accident. But Dad, isn't it because you wanted to commit suicide for love without telling me? You only thought about Mom. Did you ever think about me?" At this point, Simon's voice took on a sobbing tone. And Arthur also choked up. It seemed as if they were the victims. I felt so disgusted that I almost couldn't stand it. It was only because my nephew patted my back reassuringly that I managed to calm down. After the father and son finally stopped crying, Arthur suddenly asked Simon, "Did you destroy the poisoned insulin?" When I heard this sentence, my heart skipped a beat. Simon was unhappy. "Dad, the way you arranged the insulin thing was so clever. Why should we destroy it? You sent me an email about it. Violet won't know. Let her keep taking that insulin. As long as she dies, we father and son can spend a compensation money together. She has occupied your mother's position for so many years. It's time for her to pay the price." Hearing Simon's venomous words, I felt a chill all over my body. How could the son of a beast be a decent person? I completely gave up on this father and son. Inside the door, Arthur was silent for a while and then said, You're right. Violet is just a housewife. I overestimated her. She has always been curious about what's in my box. Now that she has seen it. So what? I deceived her. But I also provided for her food and shelter all her life. Even if she regrets it. Can she turn back time? Now she can't live without me at all. She'll just throw a tantrum. Once she figures it out and accepts her fate, everything will be fine. Simon was still a bit worried. But Dad, I think Violet's attitude this time is a bit different. She actually dared to ignore your life and death and my wife's situation. Dad, we are both respected people. We can't let her cause a scene. Arthur snorted confidently. That's nothing. I know Violet very well. She loves me too much. Every time it's her who compromises and apologizes. I just need to wait. Even if this time is more serious and she can't get over it. It's just out of jealousy. If I pretend to commit suicide for her again, she'll feel balanced and will continue to work like a slave for us. Simon's tone was filled with admiration. Dad, I have to say, you're really amazing. You're simply a role model for men. Arthur snorted. I know you don't believe me. But don't worry. For such a big thing, heading for Feldmadsescher, I definitely have a backup plan. There was a murderous intent in Arthur's voice. First, use a delaying tactic. In case Violet has other ideas. I'll kill her again. And when Simon heard about killing, instead of hesitating, he clapped his hands in approval. After listening to the conversation between the father and son, I was almost frozen in place. It was my nephew who helped me leave. Even after getting in the car, my nephew was secretly wiping away his tears. I followed suit. I'm an incompetent aunt. I didn't care about him much in normal times. Now, not only do I have to trouble him, but I also make him sad. After we finished crying, my nephew took me back to his home. He wasn't married, but his home was very clean, and he had even prepared the largest room for me in advance. Now, he settled me in this room. As soon as we got home, he started preparing the prosecution procedures. For the next few days, my nephew took leave from the company and accompanied me to run around. During this period, that father and son called me countless times. But I didn't answer any of them. Simon also sent me a photo of his newly born son, trying to make me soften my heart. But this child had no blood relationship with me at all. Why should I feel soft-hearted? I deleted the photo without a second thought. A few days later, Simon borrowed a phone to call me. I thought it was a call from the court, so I answered it without thinking. It turned out that Simon was acting crazily on the other end. Mom, where on earth are you? Can you stop making trouble? Do you know that Dad committed suicide because of you? This time it's really dangerous. He's even in the intensive care unit. Dad left a handwritten letter saying that he knows he was wrong. Only after losing you did he realize that he loves you the most. As long as you come home, he won't think about the past anymore. We can live a good life as a family. His voice was so loud that I thought it was too noisy. So I held the receiver away from my ear. There was nothing substantial in what he said in the end. I just said, "Oh." Simon obviously didn't expect me to be so indifferent. He was stunned for a moment and then burst out a sobbing tone. Mom, Dad has something to say to you in person. He hung up the phone and sent a video call. This time I answered it. I wasn't touched. I just wanted to see how the father and son were going to act. In the video, Arthur was lying in the hospital bed with tubes inserted. When his cloudy old eyes looked at me, they were filled with deep affection. He weakly recalled our past. Violet. Actually, I fell in love with you the first time you came to our unit for an interview. I just kept thinking about the dead person at that time and couldn't get over it. Later, I stubbornly believed. Alas, hadn't fulfilled what I'd say. Never mind. I didn't expect that after living most of my life. I still haven't understood anything. When I think about what I've done, I wish I could kill myself. Violet, I only realized after almost dying once that I really can't live without you. Please come back. Arthur performed with great emotion, and a tear rolled down his wrinkled face. As for me, apart from getting goose and all over, I didn't feel anything else. I thought to myself that without watching a decade of cheesy soap operas, One couldn't say such searing why words. At the age of 60, he was still talking about love. This old man really didn't understand life at all. I wanted to say something, but my nephew told me to try not to alert the enemy before the formal prosecution. So I closed my mouth and focused on watching his performance. By the time Arthur had finished saying all the lines he could think of, he realized that I had no intention of wavering at all. The old man's cloudy eyes rolled around, and he suddenly leaned closer to the screen. He asked me in a sinister tone, "Violet, where are you now? I still want to see you one last time." The murderous intent that flashed in Arthur's eyes came to the screen clearly. I was so startled that I quickly hung up the phone. That night, I had a nightmare. I dreamed that Arthur and Simon were surrounding me with knives and stabbing me viciously, one knife after another. Even when I woke up the next day, I was still in a bad mental state. I went downstairs in a daze to buy groceries. And as soon as I went out, I was caught by the police. I thought the police officers were there to help me, until they grabbed me from both sides. I asked nervously, "Officer, why are you arresting me?" The police officer explained, "Auntie, Anne, don't be scared. You don't know that you have Alzheimer's disease, do you? We received a report from your husband and son saying that you were deceived by someone and ran away with all the family property. It took us a lot of effort to find you. Don't worry. We'll take you to your family right away." I quickly explained, "I'm not sick. I came out on my own. And I want a divorce." "Auntie, people with the disease are not aware that they are sick. Your son has already submitted your diagnosis report. And you do have Alzheimer's disease." "Fine. Another diagnosis report. Arthur and Simon are using the same old trick again. Haven't they pinned enough false illnesses on me?" I frantically explained that I really wasn't sick. But the police obviously believed the diagnosis report more. He pointed at my nephew who was being escorted down and said, "This is the person who deceived you out of your money. Your family won't harm you." Seeing my nephew being handcuffed by the police, I was so angry that I started struggling frantically. This attracted a lot of onlookers. Some kind-hearted people were already muttering, "Could this be violent law enforcement?" They took out their phones and started taking pictures. The police had to step forward to explain. My nephew took the opportunity to come up to me and soothe me. "Auntie, don't be anxious. Whether you're sick or not, we'll know after getting an appraisal at the police station. The police will give us justice. They told such a lie that can be easily exposed. They must have other motives. We still need to be on high alert." I calmed down and thought my nephew was right. So I cooperated with the police's actions. Sure enough, after half a day, my nephew proved his identity as a lawyer and his kinship with me. I also cooperated to prove that I was in a normal mental state. We reported the case, by the way, and officially accused Arthur and his son of attempted murder. After coming out of the police station, I felt a great sense of relief and finally took a sigh of relief. Next, as long as my nephew and I go to the appraisal institution to get the evidence, Arthur and his son won't be able to escape. But I never expected that as soon as I left the police station, a figure rushed towards me. By the time I reacted, Arthur's ferocious old face was already right in front of me. He was still holding a syringe in his hand. In an instant, when I thought I was done for, a police officer actually rushed out and kicked Arthur to the ground with a flying kick. This old guy had attempted suicide twice before, and now he couldn't make any more trouble. He stared at me with malicious eyes and cursed, "Violet, you won't die a good death. You colluded with outsiders to harm your husband and child. You can even lay a hand on the child you raised with your own hands. You don't deserve to be human." His shameless words made the police officers present couldn't help but roll their eyes. I had so many things I wanted to scold him for, but I didn't even know where to start. It's a waste of breath to say even one more word to such a beast. My nephew picked up the syringe on the ground and handed it to the police, saying resentfully, "Officer, I told you this old guy had bad intentions. He actually tried to attack someone right in front of the police station. The poison in this needle is most likely the same as the poison he put in my client's insulin. Now that we have the evidence and the culprit, he should be punished for multiple crimes." The public security officers took swift action and quickly collected a complete chain of evidence of Arthur's crimes. However, since Arthur insisted that his son was unaware and Simon had not participated in the actual crime, only Arthur was arrested in the end. Half a month later, Arthur's attempted murder case and my divorce case were heard together. Before the court session, Simon also showed up as a witness. He stopped me in the corridor and talked a lot about his childhood, trying to awaken my maternal love. He wanted me to take less of the property and leave more for him because he had to raise his child. But I just thought it was ridiculous. Which thing wasn't me making sacrifices for him? What had he ever done for me? Was it giving me coarse grains or giving me his mother-in-law's old clothes? Forget it. I won't give you a single cent. I pushed him aside and walked in. But he lost his temper. He rushed in front of me and roared. You've never done any work in your life. Why do you think you can ask for so much of my dad's property? Just because you were a housekeeper? Have you ever thought that you're 60 years old? How will you spend the rest of your life? Without your son to support you in your old age? Do you expect your nephew to do it? Up to now, looking at Simon's furious appearance, I no longer feel heartbroken. I just want to sneer. So what if I'm 60? It's never too late to turn things around. Because the evidence was complete. There was no suspense in Arthur's judgment. For forging medical certificates, attempted murder, attempted homicide, and malicious insurance fraud, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison for multiple crimes. He will die in prison. The judge approved my divorce application in court. Since Arthur was at fault, most of the property was awarded to me. After the court session adjourned, Simon chased me and cursed me for a whole street. All he said was that I had taken the money that belonged to him. I didn't hold back either. Following my nephew's advice, I posted what he had done online. Simon quickly lost his reputation, his job, and his wife ran away with their son. As for me, having fulfilled my obsession, I received a lot of sympathy from netizens. They were indignant and said that I was just an old lady. They donated $1 each and managed to raise enough pension money for me. I refused their kind. My property was enough for me to support myself in my old age. And I asked them to donate the money to those in need. But through this experience, I also felt the kindness of strangers. It was much warmer than my cold family. I opened my live streaming account and shared my daily life of living in retirement, which was well received. Next, I plan to start a series on RV travel. It's never too late to start a career at the age of 60. Before setting out on the trip, I went to visit Arthur in prison. I told him that in fact, I had heard about his first love back then and also suspected Simon's origin. At that time, there was no paternity test, so I specifically had my blood type checked. Arthur had type O blood, and Simon had type AB blood. They could never be father and son. He was the one who had been deceived for a lifetime. Arthur's grayish-white lips trembled for a long time. When he stood up, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of old blood. He mumbled, Grace. Grace, heading for so wide sigh. You've deceived me so bitterly. I didn't look back. When I walked out of the prison and looked at the sunlight above my head, I chuckled. I was just kidding. It seems that compared to the lover he was deeply in love with, he believed more in me. The fool who had dedicated my whole life. When it comes to deception, as long as others believe you, no matter how absurd the lie is, it can be accepted. Arthur, this is what you owe me.